allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stop it. Okay. There are no district announcements or public input at this time, so we'll go right to Mr. Carmelo for his reopening discussion.
Thank you very much. We've obviously been involved in our reopening meetings and work for, it feels like nonstop every day with meetings and discussions. I wanted to review a little bit of last week's panel discussion, and we have one more for parents tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Last week went really well. We gave some updates that the board already knows, but I'll give them again now. One is that we did finally agree, well, official agreement will be tonight after the board approves new calendar, but we're going to move the 4 professional development days up to the beginning of the year. That'll be Tuesday through Friday after Labor Day, which means students won't start until Monday, September 14th. We suggested it, I think that was a couple of weeks ago now, but it seemed universally agreed upon that that was the right move. It gives all of us a chance to get everybody ready for those 4 days so that we could hit the ground running on the 14th. So that was one of the updates I gave. The gaiters, I mentioned that we were buying gaiter masks. Those are the ones that are on your neck, like a turtleneck almost, that you pull up. For students and staff. Pretty soon after I announced that, there was a study at Duke University that says the gaiters were the worst masks as far as protection and keeping the droplets in. It's only one study, and it hasn't yet been confirmed by the CDC, but it's still out there, and so we want to always be acting in abundance of caution. So there was no reason, if that ends up being confirmed or being repeated in other studies, we don't want to be caught with something that's putting people at risk. So we've switched that, we've changed courses, and we've bought the masks similar to, or we're in the process of, the masks similar to the ones we bought for the graduation for the students at Troy High School and some of the adults that were there for that graduation ceremony. So we'll still have 2 different colors, one for students, one for staff. It'll still have the T logo, it'll still be cool, but it won't be gaiter masks. CDTA update as well. So we're working with CDTA, as I've said now for a week or so, still working it out. It was really too quick notice to do whole scale where they would do the whole school. There are several neighborhoods and areas that they don't go to right now. One off the top of my head is Brunswick Road and North 40 areas. So obviously we'll still transport those students. So we're going to do a combination of CDTA and Durham, and we're still working out all the details of that. As soon as we have them, we will let people know. One of the things that I should say at this point is we've had about 3,400 forms filled out from the parents where they make their choice for in-person or hybrid or the remote only. And also in that form, they let us know whether they need transportation or not. So 3,400 is good, but it was due last Friday, so we still have several hundred left. Principals are working really hard. Erin Clary put something out on social media again today. Anybody that's listening, parents who have not filled that out, please fill it out today. If you know somebody, your neighbor or a relative or somebody who hasn't filled it out, please get them to fill it out today. We really can't make our final decisions about scheduling and about transportation and about all the things we're going to have to do before school starts without getting those filled out. So again, encourage everybody to get that filled out. And the principals are actually doing home visits right now and making phone calls so that we can get all of that done. I will give you an update on what those numbers look like right now with 3,400 or so in. We're still at about 40% district-wide requesting remote. We've been in that 36, 37, up to 40 range the whole time, so it's really not going down, it's going up over the last few days. It varies by building, but there are some buildings that are even in the 50% range. Not sure who that is, but we have some buildings in the 50% range, and so again, once that is all completed, we'll be able to assign staff to those areas and make decisions about transportation, start times, and all of that. All of that is depending on how those final numbers come out. And then the rest of last Thursday's presentation was the remote plan by Dr. Watson. So she did a whole PowerPoint presentation. Really was received well. She went through the details of what, when you're choosing remote only, what it would look like at the elementary level, the middle school and high school levels. And again, since that time, our percentages went up, so I think people received that very well. If you didn't get a chance to see it, the recording is on our website. The website is updated regularly, the FAQ is there, the recordings of all of our panel discussions, all of our employee forums, my presentation to the board that I did last week, or last meeting. So all of that is on the website, so if you didn't see last week, you might want to watch it. And next week, tomorrow, we'll focus on some special ed questions that keep coming up for the special ed population, as well as some updates about ventilation and some other things. The only other thing is not really reopening related, although I guess it is just when we're putting the plans together and trying to finalize some things, we get hit yesterday and got bounced back a little bit, and I don't know if we've recovered yet. We had like a 3-hour cabinet meeting this morning or this afternoon to try to discuss things. But all along when we had our budget conversations, we've been talking about the state budget and the look-back periods, and the first 2 look-back periods are gone. The second one, or the third one, goes all the way until December 31st. And the governor sent a letter to Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand yesterday, imploring them to help with federal stimulus, third package. And in his letter, and we've been saying that all along as well, he's talking still about that 20% cut. And if the stimulus money doesn't come in, so that's going directly to localities like the city of Troy or to school districts or wherever to help with the revenue shortfall, then that 20% is going to be a reality. And we've talked about how that is going to affect us, right? So the reason why yesterday was kind of a bounce back is not only that letter, but yesterday was one of our first aid payments. So there's a bunch of different aid categories, and they come in at different months throughout the year. So yesterday was our excess cost aid, one of our excess cost aid payments. That total payment is going to be about $12 billion. Yesterday's was not that much, but the payment from yesterday's excess cost aid to districts, not just Troy District, was reduced by 20%. Now, it says a temporary reduction. There's words that say this could be a delay and not a cut, but it really, the next language is what I've just been saying. It's going to depend on if that stimulus is coming. So if the stimulus isn't coming, the fear is that that delay becomes a cut, and the fear more than even that is that 20% starts being like to all of our stuff. Remember, our foundation aid is about $40 million, so 20% is $8 million. And I mean, it's it obviously caught us off guard yesterday, but if we really, I mean, it's too early to have to start making panic decisions, but if we're really going to have to cut $8 million from this year's budget, we're going to have obviously it's going to be devastating, and it's going to change the way this district looks.
It just blows my mind. We have to do all these additional things to open the building because of everything going on.
That's exactly right. We're purchasing stuff. We're going to have to add things throughout the district for safety and security reasons and for other things. And the part that's even more disturbing, Tom, is when I have morning meetings with the local superintendents, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And this morning's meeting, they brought some people from state aid planning. And for this delay, the 20% was across the board. And remember what we talked about, our 20% is not the same as suburban schools,
Right.
you know, high wealth districts 20%. And for this delay, again, this isn't a cut right now, it's a delay, but it was just 20% across the board. So I gotta send those same kind of emails that I sent during the budget season. I'll do that tomorrow to NISCUS and NISBA and the Small Cities Group and John McDonald and Neil Breslin, all the same people. They responded last time that they would make sure it doesn't happen again, so I just got to make sure that they know that it looks like it's in that same trend. So again, we debated whether even to announce it tonight because it's too early to panic, but we've been saying all along that 20% is still hanging over our heads. So it became a little more real yesterday when that first payment was cut 20%. And again, not cut, but delayed at this point. So those are the two things. It certainly does affect our reopening. One of the districts today was so mad, said he might just go virtual and save his money that way. Certainly we want to do. It'll be something we have to talk about if these cuts really do happen. So sorry to be a downer, but that was this morning's reality for us here in the district office.
So on the reopening,
Yep.
talking about CDTA, does CDTA do they have to follow that rule where it only can be one person in the seat as well as, or can they? I mean,
That's a good question. I don't know what their rules are.
No, they're not bound by one person per seat. That's public transit. So they've said they have their own recommendations for people to do, but it's still a public bus run. So it's not specific just to Troy students. So other people could get on that bus. So they don't have a specific one per seat.
But they have to wear the mask on this.
Have to wear a mask and attempt to stay socially distant.
And I think just recently they opened up their front doors.
They did, yeah. It was on the news yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday.
They what?
They were only letting people in and out, on and off the back doors of the bus. And just yesterday they opened up the front door so you start paying and everything. So they're fully operational now.
Once the form filled out by everybody, and Mario got an update from CDTA this morning, and we'll meet on that tomorrow, just to kind of go through it, but we'll be able to finalize a lot of stuff hopefully by the next board meeting.
Does anybody have any questions or comments before we move on?
John,
Yes?
are we still being able to stick to almost 15 in a classroom right now as far as the numbers go?
It's a good question. So our district-wide, like I said, our district-wide percentage is in about 40% in. So at the middle school and high school level, I mean, again, it's not the same in every building, but that leaves 60%. And remember, they're half home, half in school. So we're talking about the middle school and high school, only 30% of the kids really coming every day. So the class sizes should be, the good thing about 40% choosing remote is it's going to make the social distancing both on the buses and in the classrooms easier. If the numbers were lower for the remote, we may have been looking at some class sizes that were too high to manage. I think we're going to be fine with that, yes.
Okay. What about the elementary though?
Yeah, same. I mean, some of the elementaries are 50% going remote. So again, only
Really?
only half the students will be coming in. So I mean, if the normal class size is 20, that's 10 in a class. We may have to combine some, so it might not stay at 10. But we're gonna be a good place as far as social distancing.
Okay.
So we
Are we going to have numbers on that? God bless you, Rosemary. Are we going to have numbers on that at the end of August, or?
Well, we want the numbers today. The deadline was last Friday, so that we can spend this whole week, because it's going to be a lot of work still, changing class assignments at the middle school and high school, changing all the student schedules. Like, if you have a class right now, the schedules are done. So if you have a third grade class of English 9, But now, half of those kids are remote, they're coming out, which means some kids have to go in. There's a lot of work to still be doing. So that's why we need all the parents to fill out that form, and so as soon as that happens, again, at the beginning I said principals are calling, principals are making home visits. We're trying to get everybody to fill it out. So at some point we're going to make a decision for the people. That's the problem. If they don't fill it out, they're going to end up,
That's what I was going to ask
losing their
next.
ability
What
to
next?
decide. Yeah, so we'll just have to default to something and make a decision.
It's not a rarity on the first day of school, you have people standing in line to get in the building.
Yeah, that won't happen this year.
And that's what my concern is that are we gonna be able to turn them away? I mean, how's that gonna be handled?
Yeah, we'll put something out on social media. It's not gonna be like it used to be where you could come and say, I'm registering right now.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, we'll make sure that we set up a protocol for that.
okay. All
I
right.
have a question also. This is Rosemary, just in case no one knows. How are you going to handle the behaviors? What are you going to do about that?
Which behaviors?
Which behaviors? I mean, you have a lot of kids coming back into school. Well, we know some of them have bad behaviors, and they're coming back to school. How are you going to handle the behaviors?
I mean, I don't think we're going to handle them any differently than we have. Unless you're talking about the social emotional strain that this pandemic closure has had, so we have a plan through our SEDL committee that we're going to focus, and actually Donna Watson was working with Donna Fitz and Amy Prabhakaran today on it. We're going to focus the beginning of the school year on the whole child and getting kids kind of mentally and emotionally ready to be back to the old routines that they haven't seen in 6 or 7 months. So we do have a plan for that, Rosemary, if that's what you mean. If you're talking about the regular classroom misbehaviors, they'll be dealt with the same way they always would.
Well, what I mean is that's part of something what I'm talking about also. But
yeah,
we spend a lot of money on what the district does, which is tax dollars, on those handbooks that we pass out to parents every year. The children have to sign them, the parents have to sign them. Are we going to be more? Are we going to apply that handbook to behaviors? Because last year we had some pretty bad. It's the code of conduct, that book.
yeah.
Are we going to at least? Are we going to? If you're going to spend all this money to get that code of conduct book out, we should at least make sure that the parents sign them and that they understand that their children during this time hit other children and do all this other stuff. There's consequences. Not just going downstairs into that turnaround room where they go down there and tear that room apart. But what are we going to do about the behaviors? Because it's going to come up with parents, with you. You guys, is the district going to be able to handle it?
Yes, we're going to be able to handle it. So we don't hand out that code of conduct anymore, except unless it's requested. We do that all electronically, which saves money for the first part that you're talking about. And yeah, certainly we're going to follow it. We hope, again, with the focus on the beginning of the year and trying to help kids transition back and really focusing on their social and emotional well-being, we hope that those are reduced. The code of conduct has a lot of things in there about restorative justice now and relationship building and trying to be proactive. But certainly when the violations occur, we will follow the consequences in that code of conduct.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be watching.
I was just going to say, just as important about the class size of the number of students is the square footage of the room.
Yeah,
So
not
you
all
can-
rooms are the same size. Yeah. But so we were talking about that with the principals yesterday. Some rooms are bigger than others, and so some rooms can easily fit 15 or 16, and some rooms might be 10 or 11 that can fit and be still properly.
She'll kind of drive the decision as much as just the stand.
Absolutely.
Are we in the process of, are we still going along the lines of getting trailers to empty out the?
Yeah. So that's underway. I sent the email out last week. I met with all the unions this week,
and just had conversations about things that were on their mind, but also things that we're trying to do. And really there were questions about the clean out, like what can I leave and what can I stay, but really no issues about people coming in and doing that. So that's underway.
Okay, and for the most part, the classrooms are just gonna be empty, we're just gonna have desks and chairs in there, is that?
Yeah, there'll be some variations, but pretty much the email said teacher desk or table, student desks, and our MX800, or comparable technology that's in all the classrooms. There will be some exceptions to that, but that's pretty much the template that they're using to do it. And that makes for a different learning experience for kids. I mean, there are things in those rooms. I think Ann App or Rosemary said last time people have kept things in those rooms for a long time. But a lot of those things are things that kids need to learn, and we're not going to be able to use them at least at the beginning of the year at this point. We're going to be kind of bare bones in the classrooms for obviously for reasons.
Is it allowed, like, by fire marshals for us to utilize the hallways for books and things like that?
The classroom libraries at the elementary level, we're going to put them in the hallways. I don't know if that's officially allowed, but you asked it out loud, so I'll answer it out loud.
Yeah. Okay. But we are still gonna have the access, kids will still have.
Yeah, we have to have classroom libraries, we have to have kids reading all the time, every day. So if they can fit against the wall in the classroom, we might leave them in for the places like Stephanie just said, the rooms that are smaller that can't, and maybe there is more students than a room down the hall. Those books might be put right outside the room, against the wall. Hopefully that.
Built in. Some of them are built in.
Some are built-in shelves, yeah. But yeah, it is underway, and it's early, but so far no issues, except for questions about can I leave this kind of thing.
And where are we putting the trailers?
Your house?
Yeah, where are we putting the trailers? Not in my driveway.
Definitely not in your driveway. We're still working with the vendor on pricing, whether they'll be stored off-site or in worst case scenario, maybe regate them in the parking lot, but that's the worst case scenario if we can't get good pricing. We're spending quite a bit right now on making this all work.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind, it's just that I'd hate to see our schools
I agree.
look the way they used to look. So.
I agree. Not my ideal.
Yeah,
That's it.
but the Neff Center parking lot is also an option. Thank you for the questions.
John, I have a question.
Sure.
So, I know parents send kids to school sick all the time, basically in lieu of them staying home with them sick. How are we gonna handle kids, not necessarily COVID, but just sick kids,
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, it's going to be hard for us to separate, depending on the symptoms, I guess, who's just sick and who has COVID. So remember in one of my discussions, but these are all great questions, and it helps for people that are listening to hear them. So staff will be pre-screening themselves, like they're doing now in the summer. So I apologize if I've already said this enough times, but I'll repeat it. So you fill out, answer those questions. Do you have a fever? Have you been exposed to someone? There's a slew of questions that we answer every morning. As long as you answer no to all of them, you can come in. Some districts, and I had a meeting with the Suburban Council superintendents on Monday, some districts are letting the families also fill that form out or answer, and it's the honor system whether they're going to do that or not. We're not doing that. We're going to, because it's hard to tell who did it and who didn't, and there are apps available, but it's not real-time information quick enough, and so you'd be like going to a kid, getting them by third period, he's already been in the building. So we're going to screen students as they enter every building. The principals are already designating 3 or 4 entrances to each building, and staff members that are going to be there. And so every kid that enters will get the screening for temperature, which is the main symptom that we can do like on the spot like that. But any symptoms, Matt, to answer your question more fully, any symptoms, whether it's on your way in, if a parent did send a student, we're going to discourage it with all the communication we send out, discourage sending your kids sick. We're going to discourage employees from coming sick, even though that's against what we've been saying for a long time now. But we got to do it in this new world. If kids come and present symptoms while they're entering the building, or during the day get sent down because they're showing symptoms, there's something called an isolation room, which is going to be in every building. It's not the nurse's office, because the nurse still has to deal with kids coming for meds and all of the other things that the nurses deal with all day. But it'll be near enough the nurse's office that they can play a part in the supervision. And the isolation room, by guidance from the state, is a place that the kid has to go until his parent will come pick him up. I just mentioned that I met with all the units this week, meeting with the nurses on Monday. They asked what might be your follow-up question, Matt, is what if the parent doesn't come pick them up because they went to work? So, I mean, we'll deal with that as it happens. Right now, the plan is they stay there until a parent comes to get them. I suppose it could depend on age. If it's a senior in high school or a junior in high school and the parent says, I can't come get them, but you can have them walk home, then we'll probably do that. But for the younger kids, somebody, the parent can't come, they'll have to designate someone to come. But that's the guidance from the state, that you put them in an isolation room. Everybody in that isolation room has extra PPE and are separated, and we wait for parent pickup. Not going to be fun at all, for sure.
Along that same line, if they do show symptoms and we do send them home, and they're fine the next day, do we have some way of tracing whether or not they got tested, or do we let them back in the building?
Had a meeting, again, a weekly meeting we have with the Department of Health. We talked about that exact thing this morning. So there's no set, hard, fast rule. It's case by case. So if they test positive, so if they have symptoms and go and get a test positive, then they have to quarantine for 14 days. That one's set. A negative test at the end of it is what they're recommending. If it's just symptoms, if they're just going home because they have a fever, then that's going to be, we call the Department of Health, we talk to them, we tell them the symptoms. Sometimes it's going to be they're symptom-free for 24 hours, just like the old rules. Sometimes it's going to be still make them go to the doctor, let the doctor's note will send them back. And sometimes it'll be you have to go get tested and a negative test will send you back. It'll depend on the situation.
I think that has to do with like the combination of symptoms and the evolving nature of the guidance. So everything we do, we pretty much have to contact the health department and say, here's the situation. I think in day to day, I believe the guidance said if it's just a fever, then it's either 24 hours after the fever is gone. So without fever reducing medication. So, it's going to be a constant, I think, in the schools.
Yeah, and the other thing they talked about this morning with the Department of Health is, are they things that are out of the ordinary for that individual student or staff, right? And, headache is one of the symptoms, but you have a headache a lot, then that's different than someone who is showing 4 or 5 different symptoms and is not something that's typical. So there's not going to be a checklist of here's what's happening, here's what you have to do. It's going to be a conversation and a decision on a case-by-case basis.
We're going to be learning something every day.
It's going to be busy. Well, one thing we talked about today is getting a COVID coordinator who's going to, right now in the summer, really we're doing it, cabinet's doing it. So, when school starts, we're probably going to be too busy to
Are we going to get?
Well, it's one thing we got to talk about. It's going to be in the Friday report.
I mean, we're not going to school district in the county, going to
Right.
the Department of Health. I mean,
Right, which is what Mary Fran is saying. So we'll have to do a lot of the work. She and her staff will give us the guidance, but we'll have to take it from there because there's 20 districts or something.
Are they increasing their staff?
She said no.
Really?
She said no.
They were increasing their staff for all the influx of
Yeah.
phone calls, et cetera, that are going to be coming in.
She said
No
no.
increase.
She said no. She has 4 or 5 people, she said, full-time.
Oh. That may change.
Yeah. We'll see. It's gonna be an interesting year.
Very.
Thank you, though, really, for all the questions. It helps to talk it out.
John, the isolation room, is that staffed by medical staff or building staff?
Yeah, it'll be under the guidance of the nurse, but the nurse will be in the nurse's office, so it'll be someone else in the building, Matt.
Okay. One more question.
Sure.
My wife went to one of the virtual meetings, but she couldn't answer a question for me. Like special classes for remote learners, like gym, band, things like that. How are we handling that?
Good question. I'll let Donna answer in a minute. We met with the curriculum leaders for all of those areas. They have some really great ideas. Donna, the PowerPoint might give you more information, Matt, but Donna, go ahead. You want to answer that?
Yes. I was going to say that at the elementary level, we had, as Mr. Carmel mentioned, we worked with the curriculum leaders, and I actually just had another meeting with them, what's today, Wednesday, yesterday, where we talked about not just those special areas, but any of the classes that are hands-on in nature. And so they are working with their colleagues in the departments. They're working with professional affiliations to which they belong, because everybody's trying to sort this out. How are you teaching art in a virtual nature? How are you teaching music in a virtual nature? And so a lot of the supervisors for PE, art, and music in the area are really working together on what that looks like. We did tell families who chose remote only at the elementary school, for example, that all assignments could be completed using only the Chromebook, because we have some families who are choosing remote only, Matt, who are not even comfortable getting supplies from the school or having any kind of contact at all. And so we said they don't need to buy notebooks and binders and art supplies. We do have virtual tools. There are ways to do art online. There are ways to do music online. The district has a variety of software programs that we can currently use. And at the secondary level, we have Apex, which is one of the online programs. We're not using it as an entire program. I know that some of the BOCEs are offering Apex to districts to share, and it's really like an online curriculum where you could do studio art completely online, and students move through the content at their own pace, and then a teacher sort of unlocks the units as they go. Our teachers will be using it as a supplemental resource, so they will be providing synchronous instruction, and they will be pulling in some of the digital tools. So an art class might look like, you know, a demonstration or a mini lesson from the teacher, some kind of group discussion. There might be an online activity that students are completing, either in Apex or in Google Classroom or in some other resource that our tech department has approved. And then the class may come back together in Google. So it really, the answer to so much of this is it depends. So it depends, you know, I also can picture at the elementary level, second graders still using crayons and markers and paint and things like that, and, you know, using their Chromebook to take a picture of their art piece. But it also is gonna look like visiting museums, interviewing artists. It's gonna look just really different depending on the grade and the family and you know, the subject area. But you know, that's sort of the best I can give you on that. I will say that there was a lot of concern about some of the hands-on things like the science labs, for example. You know, how are we gonna do those? And we did those, we were talking about it this morning, during the spring when we were closed. We still did dissections. We still did all the requirements of the science labs. We just did them in a virtual format. I mean, we had kids watching autopsies and doing all kinds of things virtually. Some might argue even more engaging than the dissection that they did physically with their own hands in front of them. So we'll do the best we can, but we can promise that all students will have, you know, the curriculum and will participate in activities and we hope engaging learning opportunities. And then we're just going to monitor it carefully. So if we have a situation where it isn't working as we think it could, we'll definitely tweak it and make it better. But our curriculum leaders felt very confident that they could deliver a strong remote experience for kids in those special areas and in the hands-on situations.
Thank you, John.
John, one more question.
Yeah, definitely.
So, for the parents that have chosen to send their kids to school,
Yeah.
they still have the option at any point to switch to remote, right?
Yes, yes. That way is fine. The other way, we're asking people to commit to January. But if students come and are uncomfortable or something happens and the situation changes for those families and they want to go from in person to remote, then that's going to be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my question was, how does that affect like the classroom size, so to speak, for the teachers that are going to be handling the remote-only kids?
Yeah, I mean, we'll spread them out as those requests come in, but without classroom management issues, it's a little easier to have a bigger class when you're doing it remotely than when you're doing it in person. So, we won't have huge classes on remote. So there'll be room for that to happen. I mean, if we get whole-scale requests like that, Matt, after a month, then we may have to, rebalance like we're talking about doing right now. If there's 20 additional third graders that opt out, we may have to have a new section of third grade. I mean, we'll adjust as the numbers dictate for us.
John, is attendance going to be taken on the virtual?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the clear directions from SED, from the state, that says attendance has to be taken just like every other year, like per period attendance. So kids are going to have to log on and be in class and participating.
Okay.
Couple other things. I said that the parent forum last week was well received, and it was. The only real complaints we got, and it happens for some of our board members too, for board meetings too, is people had trouble logging on. And so for tomorrow's session, Donna worked with Aaron Cheevers and Aaron Clary, and we're going to set up a tech number for people to call starting at 5 o'clock, and somebody will be manning that. Someone's going to stay late tomorrow to man that number. So that if people can't get on, I think there were like 20 people last time that told us they couldn't get on. So those people should just call the number that's going to be out there on the website, on social media, and somebody will help them log in. So that thank you to the staff who put that together and who are willing to stay late to do that. And then one last update, but I'll certainly continue to answer your questions. I forgot from last panel was the ventilation issue. And so we've been talking about ventilation now since it started, and especially at 16 and 18, our capital projects are in place to fix all the ventilation issues at those two buildings, but that's long term. That's a couple of years out. So when you don't have mechanical ventilation, you're supposed to use natural ventilation, and the state guidance is opening windows, opening doors, that kind of thing. But we've gotten a lot of questions from parents. It's one of the most commonly asked ones, especially from 16 and 18 parents. And so we purchased, and we said it last week at the panel, at that time we purchased 20, I'm not going to remember it, so I'm going to read it, HEPA air purifiers for the rooms that didn't have ventilation and didn't have windows. That was our decision at that time. They're medical grade air purifiers. They change the air in a 1,600 square foot room once an hour. So people were appreciative of that, but the follow-up questions from 16 and 18 is if the whole building is not, properly ventilated. And, there was issues about windows open in the winter time and all of that. So Adam and I discussed today, and so we're going to purchase them for 16 and 18 for all the rooms in those buildings. So I'll say that tomorrow night. That's not an update that anybody heard until right now. So I think that will ease those concerns and those parents that have been asking those questions.
John, does school 14 have windows?
Well, school 14, school 14 has some rooms without windows, but they have the ventilation system in place where the air is, coming from the outside. Is that right, Adam?
That's correct.
So the only two buildings that don't have the proper ventilation, and it's not
16 and
16 and 18, and that's why the capital project is fixing them.
Okay. I did have some parents ask me that same question. They some way got my my email, and I get bombarded with a lot of questions, but I refer them all back to you and Dr. Watson.
Yeah, that's what you should do. Thank you. So we're getting that a lot. And actually, some of the parents 16 were offering to buy them, but we don't really want to get into the parents buying things like that. So it seemed like it was, they weren't crazy expensive, so it seemed like it was worth doing that to ease people's concern.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions? That's it, sir.
Everybody, any other questions, comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. Really appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Action items, superintendent recommendations, human resources, staff matters. Motion for unclassified items 1 through 11.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations, human resources, staff matters, classified items. Motion for consent agenda items 1 and 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations, programs. Motion for consent agenda items 1 through 8.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent recommendations, business finance, construction managers agreement as listed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any future meetings? Our next meeting will be September 2nd at 6 p.m. here at the middle school. September 16th at 6 p.m. again at the middle school, and October 7th at 6:30. We'll go back to our 6:30 time in October here at the middle school.
At the September 2nd, I'll do one last reopening, hopefully the
Absolutely.
final stuff.
Absolutely. You might want to allow time for that,
Time.
Yeah,
because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot, even if it's just not all questions, but just discussion and stuff like that.
And I can
It's
do a
gonna
quick
be-
presentation.
Absolutely.
Tom, are we going to still have like usually at the beginning of the year, we have a transportation update?
I think we should
Do
leave
anything
alone
like
at this
that at
point.
all?
Well,
I think we
on
should leave alone.
September 2nd, we'll have some kind of update.
Okay. But usually after a couple weeks in school.
Oh, how is it going?
Yeah.
Let's
Maybe-
give
yeah,
them
let's
some
just
time.
leave it alone.
Maybe last week.
Let's just leave them alone for this year?
Yeah, I think we should back off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we could do that.
I know the information's out there for the convention, and I know we didn't officially say anything yet on it. It is all virtual this year. I personally, it's just my opinion, I don't think we're gonna get a bang for our buck this year out of it, because it is all virtual. I could be wrong, and with the state of finances, my opinion is I think we should just address it again next year.
Hope
That's it.
that is all go next year.
I mean, does anybody have an opinion on it, or?
Or does
Well,
anyone
Yeah, I
else?
mean, just looking, trying to get information, like, it looks like it's running like 3 days, 2 weeks in a row, but I couldn't get like information about what the schedule looked like to see like how much time was dedicated for each day. So it's hard to plan like out around work or whatever.
Right.
About what I could attend and what I couldn't attend.
I'll see if I can find that information.
I also emailed to ask and they didn't have specific.
Yeah, they didn't have
Okay,
it.
they don't have it yet, they're probably waiting to see if,
They had the
what the
law
demand is gonna be.
I think Matt might not have heard you. Matt, Teresa said she'd get email, they don't have specifics yet, so, we'll wait to see what specifics Teresa gets. When she gets them, she can mail them out, or email them out, all out to us, and go from there.
Okay.
And the other thing, Tom, is that there's a few committees that some of us are on, like the Small Cities usually meets there. The Black Caucus group usually meets there, so there may be some committee, I don't know if we have to sign up for the whole thing, we'll have to see how it works.
Okay.
But there may be certain things that we want to do, if we can piecemeal it. I hear what you're saying, and you're right.
But if we can piecemeal it, that would be great.
If we can piecemeal it, and for the things that we're kind of signed up for, that because we're required to do it, I think, I don't know if those groups are even going to have it because it's virtual, but if they do, we probably should still be part of those things.
Also, I know that there's, if we're gonna do a voting delegate, I did read where the voting delegate does not have to pay registration to go into the business meeting. So, at least, you know, I think I would.
Do that part,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, at least I can do that part, but everything else, and they raised the price after a certain date, which I don't understand how they can do that when they don't even have a schedule posted, so we can't even figure out what we can go to or what we can't go to, so,
Yeah, I think it's like mid-September is when the cutoff for early registration was.
Yeah, so we'll hope the information comes out before
Yeah.
then.
And we'll see what it's gonna cost.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I had a question about meetings. I think September, like the week of September 2nd right now is the last block of time for virtual meetings.
Yes.
Are we waiting to hear if that's gonna be extended or it's not? I guess we'll all be rubbing elbows again.
Yes. So at this point, he's waited till that day and then has extended it, he being the governor. My guess is he'll do that again, but at some point, yeah. When we come back though, Matt, I think we'll try to spread it out. When we had our reopening committee in here, we had 20-some people in here, and what we did is, instead of having it like this where we're all next to each other, we spread the tables out a little bit so there's more distance between everybody. So as we start getting more and more of the board members coming, we'll set up the room a little bit different so that we're properly spread out. But my guess is he'll extend that at least a little bit more.
Fair enough.
Anyone have anything else?
I'm good.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.